Activate laser beams. Welcome back, listeners, or if you are new, welcome to the Digital Divide Podcast. I am Justin Fry.
And I am Joshua Charletto.
So let's cut to the chase. All right, so Josh, I would like to start with section number uno, newsreel, on a surprise, surprise review of a recent game that just came out, a video game. Yes, you might ask, Justin, why are we talking about video games again on this podcast?
Well, because we can't admit to ourselves that we're interested and that we want to keep talking about them. So we do, and then we say we won't.
Right, but it's okay. But anyways, this game is specifically, I think it's specifically for Nintendo Switch. I don't think it's on anything else.
Yeah, it's exclusive to the Switch.
But it's called Octopath Traveler. It's a JRPG, which I believe stands for just a Japanese roleplay game. Am I correct?
You did it. Good job.
Hooray! But it's a basically like almost like a side scroller, but not really. How did you describe it earlier today? Like a
I used some fancy terms called isometric 2D. So basically, through some magic, using a 2D background and 2D sprites, they can create a 3D almost effect using the trick of perspective.
Yeah, and it's really beautiful, honestly, and it's kind of nostalgic in a way where it brings me back to the older games, not side scrollers, but like that 32-bit plus 6-bit feel of an RPG, just obviously more updated. But long story short, it's a pretty hefty game. It's I think there's 7 main characters that you can pick from, and each of them have their own path. And it's a turn-based RPG, so your encounters that you face will be turn by turn, meaning you will attack them depending on the roll or depending on the coincidence, they might attack. But it's really cool. I never really thought I would like turn-based. I've always stayed away from them, but I downloaded the demo, I think a couple days ago, and I played it last night for, I'd say, about an hour, and I'm going to be honest, I was pretty hooked. I actually liked it better than, and don't kill me, but I liked it better than Breath of the Wild.
What?
Yeah.
Justin.
I think it's because I have less time to focus, or I lose my focus when I play games now, and this lets me focus, not linear, but there's less of things for me to do. And I don't feel overwhelmed by the amazing images that are, and the vast environment that I have to travel to get to the next tower and to the next shrine. So I enjoy it, but ask me in a week. So
I was going to ask you, and now you've already ruined my question. But
Perfect.
I had just realized as you were talking about this game that in all of the game discussions that we've had over the years, I realized that you have never really played turn-based games, which is, in my opinion, a disappointment. There are so many great turn-based games.
Yeah. To be fair, I did play lots and lots and lots of turn-based when I was younger, and I'm sure people find that funny.
Oh, which ones?
Legends of Dragoon.
Oh,
was
yeah.
Actually, my favorite turn-based game.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
I played that game way too much, and that was on the original PlayStation.
Yeah.
And I love that game. And actually, Pokemon's technically a turn-based game.
Yeah, it is.
So
totally.
I played that all the time.
All right, you're good. You played a lot.
But recently, within the last 5 years or so, yeah, you're correct. I really didn't play any turn-based games. But check out the review. It's up on IGN. There's plenty. It's a huge game. It's very popular in Japan, and just as much or maybe even more popular in the U.S. I don't know, but it's just been out for less than 2 weeks, I think. And what's really cool is that if you do download the demo, and you play for, I think, the first 3 hours, I think is how much you can play. I can't remember. But what you do in your demo, if you buy the game afterwards, will actually carry over. So no more replaying the first 3 hours. It's really cool.
It's like modern game systems.
It's like people realize that you don't want to play the demo or the beta and then have to restart over.
Yeah, well, that's an old hat trick, but...
Anyways.
It looks freaking great, so I'm glad to hear that you like it.
Yeah, cool.
So my news article is about an article I read today from iMore, which is kind of an Apple pundit website.
No way.
Yeah.
You reading an Apple-related
I know,
article
it's
on
shocking.
an Apple-related website?
Right. Shocking. And it's shocking that they talk about Apple News on this website about Apple stuff. But
What?
the 2018 Q3 sales numbers and revenue numbers were talked about in the revenue call from Tim Cook from Apple. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because I was reading this article and it was just blowing my mind. So let's see if it blows your mind. They were quoting that for Q3 2018, so just quarter three of this year, they made $53.3 billion in revenue.
That is a lot.
That is a massive, massive number that I can't even comprehend, and it's unbelievable and a little bit ridiculous that they are making that much money in a single quarter. I can't even, I would almost want to go start to research what other top-end companies are making at this point per quarter, just to get a comparison, because I guess I don't know, or maybe this isn't as shocking, but this just blew my socks off when I was reading this.
It blew your socks off?
Yeah,
Did you
heard
not have
me.
shoes on?
Well, maybe both, but still, it's incredible and a little bit ridiculous.
That is.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. You're talking about a quarter. That's 3.5 plus months, 4 months. Yeah, 3 months.
3 months.
Do math, right? Do math. But that's impressive for just 3 months that they made that much money. I mean, granted, it's 17% better than they did last time.
Yeah.
And I mean, the last 2 quarters, the first quarter is always a very slow quarter because it's after the holidays, and then the second quarter is really where you might get some pickup. I think it kind of like it starts to increase, and then really towards the third and fourth quarters where you hit the holiday sales and the back to school sales. So,
right.
Granted, yes, it's up higher, but I mean that's a lot of money. And Amazon just hit the 1 trillion mark the other day, or Bezos passed Gates for being the richest man alive.
Well, and that's the thing, is that with their revenue, Apple's within striking distance of the 1 trillion mark. I mean, they're right there, which is crazy. That's an insane amount of money, so I just can't get over that. Anyway, I put it into the show notes. Go ahead and check it out if you're so inclined. I just thought it was kind of interesting. They break down how and where they make their money and why, so they do that every quarter, and I always like to read it. So, yeah, check it out.
There's no follow-up, which is nice. I always like no follow-up, but if there are people out there listening out there, hi Mom, go ahead and send in some feedback if you have anything, if you have questions about something we talked about the previous day, whatever, previous day meaning previous recording, go ahead, send it to us. We'll talk about it in this section too, I think is definitely plausible, but we don't have anything this week, but that's okay because we have a pretty interesting topic this week. Or I always like to think we always have interesting topics, but today we're talking about something that's pretty relevant within the next couple months, specifically for college students, but going back to school, what should I buy my kid for school? And that can be from high school or college. I thought it was a good idea, one, because at one point we were in this situation and we had to go through all that research. But some people get a little scared when it comes to this, especially when they go to like a Best Buy and the guy says, here's 3 different guy or girl says 3 different laptops that are ranging from, $400 to $2,200, and you're like, what do I get my son and daughter? So we figured we'd try and help you guys out a little bit.
If I was worried that they would ever sponsor this podcast, I don't think I would ever say this, but don't go to Best Buy to buy a laptop, please, or any device. They don't know what they're talking about. And they're just going to try and sell you a protection plan anyway.
To clarify, you can go and buy there, but don't ask people there for what you should get.
That's true. If you find a really good deal, go buy there.
Yeah, because sometimes they do have some pretty good deals. And, I mean, I bought my MacBook Pro in 2014 at Best Buy because I had an addition. We'll talk about it later, but I had a student discount on top of a Best Buy discount for opening a card, on top of some crazy deal that they're having. So, I mean, I got over $450 off my MacBook Pro when I bought it, which is unheard of for an Apple product. So sometimes Best Buy will have deals. But anyways,
I want to point out one thing you mentioned a minute ago now that I want to add more time to the ramp up to this topic, but you said that we both went through this process. That's not true. I have not ever gone through this process for school. So
yes, you did.
I, especially in high school, but then college, I didn't go and buy a laptop for college ever. So I went and bought one for myself to use as like doing homework at work later in life. But it wasn't like, oh, it's back to school, let's go get a laptop. And that's more about my age, I would say, rather than about, not wanting to. It's just there weren't laptops in the classroom when the first time I went to school. So pretty interesting. I'm very interested to get into it and see what the breakdown is and some of the ways that you think about it and how you approached it when you went and did that.
Yeah. Well, do you mind if I could talk about that right now. I mean, if we...
Sure. I mean, why not? Go for it.
Well, when I went to college for my undergrad, I made the stupid mistake of buying, because I finally had money from graduation, to buy a laptop that had what I thought would be, a good graphics card, a good CPU, blah, blah, but I saw it had an AMD processor, and I went, cool, I can get something cheaper, and I bought like a $700 laptop, which is nothing to scoff at. It was definitely a good purchase at the time, but maybe I could have done a little bit more research, and I bite myself and I feel like I shot myself in the foot by getting that thing, because that laptop after 2 years would overheat all the time, and at one point I hated using it, and I actually stopped using my laptop. And I had a tower, so I was already lucky for being a nerd that I had an additional piece of equipment at school to work off of. But I went and without what I thought I knew a lot about laptops, because I had been playing video games and that was part of my hobby, was building computers. But I thought I made the right decision by buying this cool-looking laptop, and it ended up being a bad idea. But
what year was that you bought that laptop?
2010.
Okay, interesting.
So
that was like when they were starting to tip over into the area where you could use a laptop for gaming. So it's pretty interesting that's... I mean, you're going to buy a device when you're spending that much money. It's like, why not get it so I can have something that does everything? That's usually the thinking, I assume. But laptops still, even today, are really compromises when it comes to games.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're getting... and compromises in the sense that the size and the heating elements and things that are in it too, if you were to get something like that, it'll be much bulkier if you truly want something that will do almost as good or perform almost as good as a tower. But if you don't, and you stick to like the lower, smaller formed laptops, like the Razer Blade Stealth, that's going to compromise video game and graphics quality. But that's not the point. That's besides the fact that I made the wrong decision. I bought some relatively cheap laptop, and I say cheap in thinking $700 is cheap, but I bought a laptop that I probably should have looked into further. It was an HP laptop, so right there and then was a clear indicator I shouldn't have bought it, because please don't buy HP laptops. I just don't think anyone should ever do that. There are better companies out there. But I made that decision, and it lasted me really only 2 years. And after 2 years, I got fed up with it because it overheated. It was underpowered, and I just couldn't use it anymore. So the next time I actually had to go through this process was my grad school. So that is when I started to make the decision to buy the MacBook Pro. But I went through a long research process of finding what I needed. So really identifying what my needs were. I never did that. I just went with what I thought would be cool. I changed that mindset and thought, okay, what am I going to use my laptop for the most? And at the time when I was going to my master's, it was database management, information systems. So I needed something that could withstand some CPU CPU high CPU usage, like a fast hard drive, so a solid state, so it would read and write fast. And I wanted it to be like a 13-inch and good battery life, and that was one of the ways I figured out like and narrowed down my laptops that I wanted to get. And then I wanted to pick a price range. I looked at like what I would pay for like a Surface, Microsoft Surface or Surface Pro. I was looking from that range all the way up to the MacBook Pro that I'm working at now. And really it was narrowing it down on, okay, do I want to pay more for a product that I know will last longer and is the name itself has some backing behind it, being Apple. So I know people who have had Apple products. My wife had at the time and still has a MacBook Pro that's actually sitting right to my left that still works just as great and is super fast after 1 or 2 updates. So I made a decision to make a leap of faith and jump into a new environment, pay more money than I expected. And to be clear, I paid $1,200 exactly for this laptop in 2014, summer of 2014. So
Pretty interesting that you jumped to an Apple computer.
mm-hmm.
That's a pretty big change and choice, so I applaud you.
Yeah, thanks for letting me talk that whole time. I appreciate it.
Well, I didn't want to interrupt.
You could have. I just felt like I was just starting to talk about things that some people are like, well, I just wanted the coolest RGB lighting on my laptop, so
Yeah.
I'm not going to get an Apple product.
Oh, goodness. Well, we could talk to those people if you want.
Oh, I got that. I'm ready for that.
So you wanted to talk about the buying process for students going back to school, which I think is a great idea. I think there's some interesting things we could talk about there. How did you want to break this down? Did you want to... We kind of had come up with the idea of using different pretend people who have different focuses at school.
Yeah.
Or did you want to talk about it from like a device-focused type situation?
I think, honestly, for people who are looking, they're looking for the role that the laptop will play. So there will be repeats in what I have here in the notes, but I think taking it from that approach would be better. Picking the individual or the make-believe individual and what they would be using that device for, and giving options.
I think that's going to be the best. Whenever I get asked this question, which is rare these days, but if I get asked this question, that's my first question. What are you looking to do with the device, or what are you looking to study, or all that stuff? So that's, I think, the first step for sure.
Yeah. So I think it's probably best to start with the high school student, because I think that gets overlooked more likely than not, because people are expecting the college students to be buying these laptops, or at least buying laptops at this time. As we grow into an age where schools are providing laptops and iPads for schoolwork, I don't know if schools have incentives if you buy your own, if you get some incentive for that, but if you have the option of buying something different than what the school provides, which would be interesting from a security standpoint, but what I wanted to recommend, and Josh actually has more experience, I think, or at least knows more about this, but some of the options that we selected for the high school student, based off of strictly a high school student being able to write papers, occasionally, record a video or two, but mainly like documentation, browsing, collaboration applications. I don't think they need to be pretty intense. Josh, can you think of any other reason why would you need to get a laptop that was heavy duty for a high school student?
No, other than them wanting to do what you did and play games on their laptop, there's not really a reason I can think of. Some of them may be doing like, who knows, I don't know, rendering club after school or something, where they want to build their own video games or something. Is that a thing?
Yeah.
I don't even know.
There was a CS club. So sure.
There you go. So no, I agree. I don't think even for a high school student you need anything massive. But this also kind of, let's talk about this here. This also brings to the front kind of a misnomer that continues on today, and that's that idea for people who don't know enough about computers and such, that they need to get the biggest and baddest and best so that it doesn't become obsolete. And we're past that these days, by the way. We're in the area now where hardware has gotten so good, software really has not caught up to it. So you don't need high-end machines to do general usage stuff. And that's highlighting what we're talking about with the high school student. They're going to write papers, they're going to send emails, they're going to need to send Word documents or Google Docs or use those kinds of things, really light usage with their computer. They're not going to need to play video games. They're not going to need, I mean, they may want to, but they're not going to need to. They're not going to need to render a video or do graphic rendering or do any kind of graphic design. That stuff is extra and is the exception to the rule. And even then, that stuff doesn't absolutely need the biggest, baddest computer these days. So
No.
it's come a long way and it's a little bit different. So to sum up, yes, I totally agree. You can get away with some cheapos. You can get away with the mid-range stuff.
Right. And what Josh had, that's why I was deferring to Josh, was there was a huge influx of people using Chromebooks. And Chromebooks, for those who don't know, Chromebook is a laptop that's strictly using a web-based browser OS. So basically, think of it as opening Chrome on your laptop or on your home PC or anything like that, and strictly working within that browser. I think it's changed a little bit, maybe from the time that I've ever seen a Chromebook. And again, Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, but
yeah, it's actually changed a lot of it.
oh boy.
Yeah,
I feel like a little.
no, you're right on the money. But what happened is that they have done a lot with Chrome OS, which is the, like Justin mentioned, that web-based operating system that runs the computer. What that really means is that it looks and feels more like you're using just a regular desktop. Like you get apps in the taskbar, you can click on them and they launch. You go to the web store, the Google Chrome web store, and you download, I'm putting that in quotes, download apps onto Chrome, but they look like just little launcher apps, just like on your Mac or just like on your PC. So it looks like you're using a regular computer. You don't realize that you're just running Chrome in the background to run all this stuff. So, and because it's all web-based applications and web-based, or I should say browser-based applications and browser-based usage, it runs really fast. So it looks and feels like a real desktop. It just, you can't, there's not much local storage. You really need to keep everything in the cloud. So, but again, that still feels, as you're using it, it looks and feels like just a regular file structure. You're just dropping files into the file structure and moving them around. It's drag and drop. So it's come a really long way, and it's very, very much like you're just using a regular computer.
Yeah, and I think they're fantastic because of I think the repairability aspect of it's really easy to like wipe these things.
Yeah, they're really, really cheap. They're very easy to repair.
Good,
Everything you do in them, because they're browser based, gets saved to Google, as in the cloud. So you can set your computer on fire and then go log into a different one. It has all the same stuff and then re-downloads all your applications without you doing anything. So it's pretty great.
Cool. Yeah, and in the link I provided, I think what seemed to be two pretty solid Chromebooks and popular in the community. One of them was the Asus Flip, which looks like a pretty sleek Chromebook or a laptop. Has some pretty good battery life for the price of $450 right now at Best Buy. And I think students might be able to save additional money. So just something to point out, if you're ever buying a laptop and you're a student and have an EDU email address, hold on to that and let the people know where you're purchasing it, because you actually might get some discounts, and that could be anything from $50 to almost $200. So make sure you say that. But yeah, it's got like 32 gigs of flash memory, so not much, but most of this is all going to be web-based and
yeah, you're not
saved
going to
on
need
the
that
cloud.
much. Yeah.
Exactly. You got 4 gigs of memory, which is plenty for something that doesn't have a lot of really onboard peripheral, or not peripherals, internals. There isn't a lot of heavy duty things in there, and you wouldn't be doing a lot of things that need that much random access memory. Yeah, but not too bad, and it weighs 2.65 pounds. That's ridiculous. That's super light.
Yeah.
So good screen too. It's full HD.
The three options you put in here, just to go through them real quick, we'll put them in the notes so you can look at them deeper.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's the Asus Flip, which you just outlined, the Lenovo ThinkPad, and the Acer Aspire. All three are great. And I would say for Chromebooks, those are pretty high-end Chromebooks. And they are all within the $400 range or so.
Yeah.
You can get $200 or sub $200 Chromebooks, and they work just fine. So if you're really, really on a budget, that's the way to go for sure.
Yeah, Acer has a couple that are really cheap.
Yeah.
And Acers are pretty good, solid.
Samsung makes a pretty good cheap Chromebook, so, and Dell too, actually.
Yeah, and that was my next thing, Dell.
Yeah.
The Acer that I did put in there is just, it's actually a full-blown.
Yeah, that's a nice machine.
For $380, you get a full Windows PC. Has the new generation of the i3 processors, which, for those who might know, I think that is dual core. Is that dual core?
Oh, yeah, that is. I'm sorry, I misspoke before. That is not a Chromebook. That's a regular machine. So, yeah, that's a nice machine.
I believe that is dual core, but they went through a whole refresh recently, so I'm out of the game since I no longer build. But it's a pretty decent processor, a great 6 gigs of RAM, which is such an odd number. You get a terabyte hard drive. It's not solid state, but
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter at this point. It's for high school, so pretty cheap. I would recommend this for somebody who really just needs a laptop for basic web browsing, document writing, etc., etc. Nothing crazy, so not going to break the bank.
I have two things to add to this. We're talking about high school students. So you brought up before that the high school might actually provide a laptop or an iPad.
Yes.
I would recommend that if they do that, that you stick with what they choose and go with their machine.
Yes.
If they provide it, take that and run with it. Even if you need to pay for it at some point, it's going to be better for them to support it for you than you having to buy your own computer and support it yourself. You will always be fighting with, not necessarily fighting with their IT department, but they won't be able to help you, and then you'll be fighting to get it repaired somewhere else or whatever. So whatever they choose, stick with that. And that leads into my next thing I wanted to mention. The thing about these machines that you picked, which are all really, really nice, they start to bleed into this $400 range. And in that range, you can get full-blown Windows PCs, just like that Acer Aspire you pointed out just a minute ago.
Yeah.
You can get full-blown Windows PCs that are pretty decent machines for about that same cost. I would also argue that you can get the 6th gen iPad as a great option here too for students even in high school.
Dang it, Josh.
The iPad is my opinion the better buy, but that's just because I'm a little bit biased, but you can do anything with that thing.
Yeah, and I was going to mention that as before we go into the next group, which would be using something similar to that. As you said, schools might provide those devices, but an even cheaper and definitely different and might need some adjustment. If the person might need adjustment to using it, it would be, like you said, the iPad, the 6th generation iPad, which really, the lowest model you can get, when I say lowest, I mean 64 gig, I think is the storage, but it's $325.
Yeah.
That's really good. You get a really good processor on that iPad, a beautiful screen. It's not the cool, amazing iPad Pro screen, but it's pretty dang good.
Yeah, you're not going to notice a difference. And the thing to remember is that we're talking about
paying attention to it.
Yeah, right. You were talking about high school kids, and of course, as far as I understand, and I'm not in that game either, but as far as I understand, they already all have phones on them. So they're fully indoctrinated in the touch lifestyle, the touch computer lifestyle, I should say, just to clarify. The touch computer lifestyle.
What's a lap? What's a computer?
A lot of them are not wanting to have like a physical keyboard like that or a computer like that. And if they want a physical keyboard, they want to be able to remove the device from the physical keyboard. So
Right.
it's a preference thing for sure. And I think a lot of them, and I'm making generalizations, but I think they actually prefer the tablet lifestyle than the laptop lifestyle. And it's interesting that that has been positioned by Apple right in that price range. It's almost like they want to sell them for school, and they're perfect for that. And a lot of schools still use iPads as their devices for their kids.
Right. So you can totally just throw away the idea of using a laptop and go into the iPad range, which from someone who actually now has the brand new 6th generation, I could almost do everything I want to from somebody who no longer goes to school to do my basic web browsing, document writing occasionally, etc., just fine. And it's even more portable and smaller than a laptop. So
yeah, it's great.
It's great. And even better, it's something that you're used to if you already have an iPhone. So it's nothing more, just a big iPhone. Cool. One thing I want to know before we go into the next section, which that was for high school. Next, we have a couple people or groups that would be going into college, specifically like majors. We tried to group these together into specific majors, and there's one group that's just like a hodgepodge of people, because I couldn't think of another way of putting it undecided without sounding
reductive.
Yeah. So I wanted to point out that, like I said earlier, make sure when you're buying these devices that you look into any of the deals that might be going on. Specifically, if there's incentives for students, they usually will have student incentives anywhere from Apple providing a free set of Beats headphones, which, I mean, I don't really know how good these are anymore because of the Apple the takeover after a couple years, but you can get a free set of these headphones. And they're not over ear, but they're like
on ear.
On ear, thank you.
Yep.
And you can get those by buying a Mac or an iPad Pro. So if you end up buying an iPad Pro, you can get these things for free. Not bad. Other companies do other incentives, whether it's like free Microsoft Office for a year, or I don't know. I'm trying to think of something specific, but make sure you look into that. And even, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, but your colleges that you're going to might already have incentives too themselves. They might have, if you look on their website in their store, or if they have like a bookstore website, you can see if you might be able to get discounts for other software like Microsoft Office or...
Oh yeah, they all do that.
Yeah, if you buy products through them.
You don't even have to, if you just sign up, they'll get you, a lot of them give you access to their...
Yeah, for free.
Software for free. You can just get Office and Windows and all that garbage,
which is awesome. So back in the day when you actually had to buy all this, I mean, it got costly. So a lot of people went to the libraries and just used the devices there. But yeah, make sure you check into that. And I can guarantee, even if it's a small private college, like the one college I went to, didn't provide to that full extent some of the incentives that like a state school might have, but they still provided discounts on a lot of products. So double check and make sure you look into that. Do you have anything to add before we jump into
Not really. You mentioned all the software. A lot of them are using, especially high schools, are using Google Docs, which is Google Drive. So, again, just highlighting that it's not, you don't need much to drive that kind of stuff. No pun intended.
I wish there was more integration and acceptance of using Google Docs and like Google spreadsheets and the Google Drive itself, because when I started in college, just to measly 8 years ago, holy cow, that wasn't really accepted, and people didn't like the idea of sharing documents, and professors weren't saying upload it to the shared classroom drive, blah blah blah. So take full advantage of that, because it's fantastic, and it's nice for collaboration. You don't have to save a file and then pass it amongst a bunch of people, and you can track who did what.
Yeah, and I just went through school with this, and it's so nice because you don't, like you just mentioned, you don't have to think about a lot of different things anymore. You just link it, and you're done, and you know that it's not Google's going to deliver it. It's going to get there. It's going to be there, and it's great because you can, like you mentioned, collaborate. So it's the best collaboration tool for sure.
Exactly. So, moving on, I'd like to try and talk about a couple people who would be going into college and looking for a device. And this is where things get a little bit more specific because some people will be going into professions after college and will need...
What? People get jobs after college? I didn't know that.
Apparently. But you might need some devices that will help you learn your trade. And you can't just go off of a $300 Chromebook. I'm sure somebody could and could argue you can.
You can make it work, but it's a pain in the butt.
But yeah, exactly. So one of the areas, groups or majors that I think really have it made because they get to try all the fun stuff. It's actually not CS majors or people doing game development or people going into engineer like CAD or using CAD or anything like that. It's actually the artists, like the art major, because the coolest thing ever is you can live your life from a tablet. Really, I mean, besides, doing your normal artsy stuff where you're building things, I don't know. I'm not an art major. I was never an art major. But you can use things like tablets specifically to do your work. So Josh had mentioned the iPad before, and we had mentioned just the 6th generation iPad for $325. It has the ability now, this year, with the 6th gen, to use the Apple Pencil. That's a big deal.
Yeah, that's huge.
Because it was only usable on the iPad Pro, which was considerably more expensive. You'd be buying in minimum, if you bought the iPad Pro and then the Pencil itself, you're already at $750, roughly, without tax and without everything else. So the fact that you can get these $325 iPads and then add the Pencil, which is $100, sorry, it's not going to get any cheaper, but honestly, it's the best thing you're going to use on that.
Yeah, try it out. Use that Pencil at the store. It's amazing. Yes. It's you can't describe it. It's completely different than even the high-end Wacom tablets from way back. And that's an interesting thing I want to highlight. You were talking about a $325 tablet, or even if you buy into the $400 or the Pro with the $650. I think it's $650 for the Pro.
Yeah, that's the cheapest one.
The Wacom tablets that did this less good, I'll call it, from a few years back. Well, I don't know, what is that, 5 years now ago?
I don't even know what a Wacom tablet it is. So.
That's the tablet that the artists used to use. It was a monitor tablet that you just drew right on top of.
Oh, yeah.
Those were started at like $600 or $700 for the tablet, and they were the smaller version with the pencil and stuff, and you had to have a computer to hook it up to. So think about the fact that this iPad contains better technology, and the Pencil updates faster and is at a higher... never mind. It's better. It's just better. So it's amazing that you're getting this technology for $325, and it's more than just, a tablet that you draw on. It's everything. It's now your computer. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and you can add a keyboard case to it, so it covers it like a normal case, but adds a keyboard to it for less than $100. You can get what I bought, which was a ZAGG Messenger Folio case, for $60, and they come with backlit keyboards and non-backlit keyboards. There's a whole slew of cases that you can get that are not $150. So really, the buy-in, you can get anywhere from $400 to $500, and it's still cheaper than the iPad Pro, so not too bad.
Yeah, and that's, again, everything. So you can sit on the couch and watch Westworld, or you can go do homework and type out a paper. I mean, it's amazing. It really is amazing.
One thing that I didn't expect to find was I shouldn't say that. The Surface Pro. Now, the Surface Pro came out when I was just getting out of college, and I would have totally bought this if it was something that was available when I was in college. But it's basically Microsoft's version of an iPad Pro. I had to stop myself there.
Yeah, I feel like even though I don't like the way they do their stuff with their tablet-based stuff, which is the Surface, I think it's selling itself short to call it like anything less than the Pro, like you're saying, because
Yeah,
it really is a fully fledged PC in tablet form.
yeah. And to be specific, it has ports. And last time I checked, and it might still have it, but it has like a mini or a micro HDMI port, which is intense because you wouldn't picture a tablet having some of those inputs, and it might not have it anymore. So I apologize if I misspoke, but you're getting a device that has almost a full OS, Microsoft Windows OS, almost has a large storage capability, a beautiful screen, really good, decent battery life, a very similar keyboard setup if you buy their included keyboard. And unfortunately, I don't think it's included anymore. I think you still need to.
Yeah, I think you have to pay extra.
Because that's actually how. Sorry, I'm looking right now quickly.
The thing I have a problem with it is that I'm a snob. So the fact that it has a fan
Oh my god.
bothers the heck out of me. And that feels less like a tablet to me. But I don't think everybody's a snob like me. So I think that some people will enjoy it. Plus, there are people in this world, Tom, that
Hmm.
like Windows. So if you do, this is the device for you. It's like a dream, this device.
Yeah, and you can really do pretty much everything on here, and it's an alternative if you don't like Apple products. So it's definitely tried and true. It's been out there for a while. It's gone through iterations. There's an even more expensive one that's actually just like an ultrabook, which is really really expensive and makes me laugh because people will say, "Oh, I'll pay $1,800 for a Surface Book Pro, but I won't pay $1,800 for a MacBook Pro." But that's besides the point. Then there's also the Yoga. So Lenovo makes and has been making for a couple of years the Yoga. It's a line of laptops that act as a full laptop, but also it's a touchscreen and folds, thus the name Yoga. It basically like folds over to act as a tablet. I actually recommended this to my sister, who bought a Lenovo Yoga, and it's really nice. I was actually impressed with it, and she loves it. It's got a beautiful screen. I don't really think she uses it really much for the touchscreen. It's more of like a gimmick if you're not using it, but it comes with some pretty solid specs. 256 gigabyte hard drive, and that's solid state. 8 gigs of RAM, which is impressive for a tablet slash. It's really a laptop, but it's impressive for a laptop for this price. And it's a 15-inch screen. I mean, it's pretty large, but it's super light. It has a 7th gen i5 right now. I think you can get the newer ones with a different Intel core. But all these fancy words that I'm saying is you can still use a Apple-like pencil. And unfortunately, I don't have a recommendation. I apologize. But you can still use this as something to create art on. You can open up whatever application artists use to draw digital pictures, etc., etc.
Photoshop.
But yeah, besides Photoshop, I'm sure there's other things, but it's a pretty decent laptop, and it gets you out from having to pay an arm and a leg to get a device that is really portable and has good battery life and actually performs outside of drawing. You can actually do your homework on it. For your Gen Ed, you can write papers. So I don't know what I would recommend. I would definitely recommend first the iPad. And if you can, and I made a comment here, if you banked a lot on your grad party, you can go ahead and splurge and get the iPad Pro because you're going to love that screen and you're going to love that using the pencil. And go ahead and splurge again buying that smart keyboard because nothing is going to work as good as that.
Oh yeah, that thing's awesome.
Yeah, and then you're hitting like almost $900 and you're asking yourself, should I have bought a laptop instead? But specifically for art majors, this would be really fantastic. And even if you wanted to go away to the Surface Pro, you can get the bigger 12.3 inch and you start to get higher specs spec bump with the bigger screen. So, and that's $800. So I would say iPad definitely would be an option, and then I would go for the.
Yeah, these days I have a hard time recommending anything for this kind of usage other than an iPad.
Yeah.
If you really have to have Windows, I guess look at something like the Yoga. The Surface,
That keyboard's terrible.
it's good in theory, and they've done some interesting things, and I really, really applaud Microsoft for doing their own hardware. I think they're going in the right direction with that. They keep missing the boat on a couple little things, but that's besides the point. The thing that I keep hearing about them is they have little problems here and there. Specifically, some of their wireless in the past has been garbage. The ones at work constantly have their fans going crazy. So it's just, I don't know, it's kind of not proven to be an amazing machine, other than like the portability, which is great, and the fact that you get a pen with it that works amazingly. You know, the function of it is nice, but the actual build quality is marginal.
Yeah.
Maybe just then go with something like a regular laptop. But you can't, I don't know, I just feel like you can't go wrong with that iPad. There's so much to it and so much you can do with it. So that would be my gold star recommendation.
I agree. And if you're doing the budget side of things, do the 6th gen with the pen and then the case for the keyboard case, and you're still going to be just shy of $550, which is not bad. And you might get a discount too because of the student discount. So I would definitely go on that route. If you have extra cash, do the iPad Pro. But Apple alternatives, definitely go for the Yoga. I think it's fantastic. My sister loves it. As far as I know, she hasn't had any problems, and she's not an art major, but she likes the actual the fact that it becomes a tablet and she can watch videos from this huge screen, and it's a touch screen, so
Yeah.
not bad.
Well, I think we have just enough time to really talk about if you need like some higher end needs besides those devices. So what did you find in your ungodly amounts of research to see how much you can spend and really get into some of the higher end devices?
Yeah. So everything's going to be in the show notes. So something that if we don't talk about, still take a look at the notes. You'll get some great links to where you can buy the products. But also I threw in some random tech in there and call outs to like services that people forget to think about, like Amazon Music or Prime if they want to order things for their students or their child, or vice versa that they want to order for school, and things like Apple Care. So take a look at those links. But yeah, to talk about people who need higher end laptops, I think one, and you both you and I would agree, if you're like a CS major, computer science major, or a game developer, or you're an engineer, and you need to use a laptop that can take and withstand heavy applications that have heavy load on laptops, the most obvious choice for me is always going to be an Apple product. So the MacBook Pro, and that can be the current gen, or I think if you can still buy like the 2017 Touch Bar, or hopefully, I think you can only get in 2018. I think everything's a Touch Bar. I don't think you have the option to get a non-Touch Bar.
I think that's right.
And then anything like 2016, 2017 MacBook Pros, you have the option to save some, like I think $100 or so, by getting the ones that don't have the Touch Bar. And to clarify, the Touch Bar is like it's literally a part of the laptop that's like it's a touch screen, and you can do certain commands on it. So I'm not going to go into details about it, but I would recommend one from the Apple side, getting a MacBook Pro. I would get the 15-inch. I wouldn't get the 13-inch because for those working and specifically doing CAD or writing like C#, using parallels to write C#. Well, I can't talk. I would definitely recommend the 15-inch because you will get from a default a better processor. You have the ability for more RAM. You have a better dedicated graphics card and a slightly larger battery. So I would definitely recommend that. You're going to get pricey. You're going to minimum pay $1,800 for a good MacBook Pro. That's just given. Do you think anything else other than Can you comment any more on the MacBook
Yeah,
Pro?
the 13-inch does have models without the touch bar, just to be because
Okay,
I
good.
thought they all were touch bar now and they're not. So 13-inch does. I personally love the 13-inch size. That's my favorite.
Hmm.
But the 15-inch, low end 15-inch is going to be better than anything you can jack the 13-inch up to. So, or at least the same. So, buying the low end 15-inch, if you really have to have the power, is going to be probably your best bet. That will be a touch bar machine. I will mention that if you're going to buy a Mac these days on the laptop side, do the 2018 models that just got refreshed, or go backwards in time and look for the 2015 models. The 2016s had keyboard problems, have keyboard problems, and also you're getting the lesser processor. The 2018s are better, so do that. I would also then want to point out that you mentioned graphics, not designers, but you were talking about actual like rendering graphics for video games and stuff. I would not do that on a MacBook at all. I would choose something else, but I also would not choose like a. I'm trying to think of all the machines I was looking through, and I can't think of. It might be something like, God, I hate mentioning them, but like an Alienware machine, even though they're not
Uh,
what they used to be.
yeah, I
Um,
would rather you get an XPS
yeah, the
than.
Dell products though aren't really that hardcore for that kind of stuff. I'm trying to think of the. Let me look up a couple things while you mention. But the if you're gonna go MacBook, it's more. I would say the graphics rendering stuff, like video game stuff, is about the only thing that I wouldn't do. The MacBook Pro is pretty solid for everything else, like video processing, using Logic and stuff for that, or audio, or even doing graphic design, especially graphic design.
Yeah. So one thing, if specifically looking from a graphics design perspective, one thing I did find out, MSI has some pretty solid
That's who I was thinking of.
laptops.
MSI. They have
Yeah,
some really good graphic based for
yeah,
like rendering and stuff.
right, and actually relatively, and I say inexpensive, but the one that I picked for recommendation is $1,000. But it comes with a dedicated, like a GeForce GTX 1050 with 4 gigs of dedicated RAM. Um, that's fantastic, and I think will do just fine for someone who wants the portability of a laptop and having the ability to do some rendering. And apparently, from sources who tell me things, uh, it's really good for Unity development. So that's something a lot of game developers are using and will continue to use.
Yeah.
So I had high marks, and for the price, that's pretty good. There are other configurations where you'll get more for it. So there's like an 8 gig. The one I give provided is like I'd say a mid tier or mid to low tier. But if you get anything higher, you're gonna get double the power, double the output for what you need. So definitely go with MSI. They're a really good brand for laptops and gaming products.
Yeah,
So
that was the one I was going to look for and recommend.
definitely go with
Definitely
that.
do them. They blow all the other ones out of the water for build quality, and you're getting good specs. So that's the way to go.
It's a little big. I mean, your laptops, when you get to things like this where you're doing rendering, your laptops are definitely going to be slightly larger,
For
just
sure.
because of the heating elements and things like that, trying to distribute the heat from the CPU. But another thing you can look at, there's the Dell XPS products. So like the XPX 13 is not too bad. From doing research, it doesn't have quite the same specs as the MSI laptop, but it's a 13-inch, beautiful screen, and you would need that true color screen like the Quad HD or 4K almost essentially. You'll need that for making sure your color correction is correct. I mean, you want to make sure you're doing you're hitting all your marks essentially. So you don't want a cheapo uh, LCD screen really here. This is where you want to focus on quality. But yeah, it's a pretty good solid steel for $750 for one of the lower end. It actually comes with some much needed inputs and outputs, so there's plenty of ports and slots. It has an SD slot, etc., etc. USB 3, not too bad. But those are two that I would recommend opposite of the Apple.
I will caution a couple things on the XPS. It's a great machine. That $750 mark, like the low end that you're mentioning,
Yeah.
it does not come with that really amazing screen. It's like just a regular HD screen. If you want the amazing screen, it's somewhere around $1,000 or something. But all in all, that's a great device. It's still, I would say, not great for like really high-end stuff, but you're going to get a really nice machine for that price. So
yeah, I'm looking at the configurations now, or at least trying to. And the $1,000 one looks like the one you should definitely go with, especially with that screen that we talked about, and it gets a big bump for RAM and storage too as well for the solid state. So
yeah,
I would recommend.
You can't go wrong with that thing. If you have that kind of money and you want to spend it on a machine, yeah, that's a really nice. That screen is amazing. So
yeah, and if anybody has ever seen the Dell Ultra Sharp screens, the monitors, those things look amazing.
Yeah.
I would argue they're almost as good, or if not as good, as the Retina monitors or the external display that Apple used to make, which they don't make anymore.
The old cinemas.
Yeah, those things look fantastic. So go ahead and take a look at those. Josh, do you have any other recommendations for?
No, I think that about covers it. We're in a weird transitionary, and I keep saying this about technology, but transitionary period right now, especially in the Apple stuff. Like, well, actually in the Windows stuff too. Like, everybody wants a tablet, but everybody wants a laptop, but everybody wants the most power, but everybody wants.
Right.
And I really think this is the first year that I could say that if you get an iPad, you're not getting a compromised computer. You have everything that you need on an iPad these days. And the multitasking is way beyond what it used to be, and so it's way better than it used to be. That being said, I still am an old man and prefer, and I'm using that just to be funny, I'm not actually old, but I'm an old man and prefer computers where you can move windows around, lowercase windows.
Modo.
Yeah, where you can move windows around on the screen and use files, but I think that's more of a comfort level as I'm watching the kids and their tablets and they're crazy with them. So anyway, there's no more recommendations. I think you've really covered a huge range here, and the thing is that I spent a lot of time doing research for my new MacBook Pro and wanted to make sure I was buying the right device, and there's just nothing that stacks up on build quality. They're all still marginal when it's compared to the way that Apple builds their laptops, but you end up paying for that too. So it's just a compromise on what you want or trying to decide what's more important to you.
So would you? I think we should do one thing where we both recommend a specific laptop for people as an overall winner for like the best bang for your buck. Maybe not best bang for your buck. Let's just say highly recommended if you can spare the change. Would that be your MacBook Pro?
Oh, that's really hard. I think even for me, knowing what I know, I would still go iPad. I would go iPad for most general use.
I'm actually torn because where I think you're correct in the sense that you can really get what you want done through the iPad, there are still going to be people who don't want to type on that smaller screen. Granted, you can get the big iPad Pro 12-inch, 12 point whatever it is, inch screen, and that is almost as big as the 13-inch, so it looks pretty similar, but some people might not it's hard for them to get over the fact that they're typing on that tiny of a screen. So I would actually recommend two things. One, recommend two things and recommend not getting one thing. Don't get the MacBook, just the MacBook by itself. Like not the MacBook Pro, but just the MacBook. You're almost paying more for what you can get for a lower end MacBook Pro. So I would argue don't get the MacBook, to get a MacBook Pro. More specifically, get a MacBook Pro with 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gigabytes of SSD, and I think and then whatever i5 processor, make sure it's a quad core. That's my recommendation specifically for the MacBook Pro. It sounds like you have a comment.
Yeah, the MacBook Pro, I agree, is an amazing machine, but it is a lot of money.
Yes.
But I think you bring up a really good point. Apple's laptops, there's the MacBook Pro, and then there's a whole lot of nothing.
Like
there's
MacBook,
there's the
and then the
MacBook,
Air.
which, and then the MacBook Air, like you said, and you're gonna hate me, but hear me out here. I would choose the MacBook Pro, and if you're on a crazy budget and can't do anything else, I would then shoot for the Air, honestly.
Ugh.
Yeah, right? So the Air is missing the Retina screen, it's a 3-year-old design, blah, blah, blah. But the regular MacBook, even though it's super tiny and whatever, it just isn't, it's really, really compromised. It's a really, really low-end processor. It's, not much of a machine. It's got one port, which isn't the end of the world for some people. Like, I don't plug anything into my computer. But still, for the college student, who knows? But I would say that's even more of a compromised machine than the really low-end MacBook Air. Because the MacBook Air has all the ports. Even though it doesn't have the amazing screen, it's still not bad. And even though it's a 3-year-old or 4-year-old design, they're still selling it, so they're still supporting it. So I would actually argue to go that direction if you don't have the cash.
And then just to keep the ball rolling, the next recommendation I have, and is not an Apple product, and it's something that I've always wanted, but everybody that I know that has gotten this product raves about it, and Josh might know what I'm about to talk about, but the Razer Blade Stealth is what people are claiming, very, very similar to a MacBook Pro, but a little bit cheaper, and is a Windows-based machine. So the Razer is an actual gaming company that makes gaming products, and they range anything from peripherals, meaning mice, keyboards, to products like, surprisingly, a phone. Yes, I know, crazy, but their laptops are supposedly fantastic, and they're a little bit more expensive. So the Razer Blade Stealth, the lowest end you can get, I believe, starts at $1,500. So that's still relatively expensive, but you are getting high level or high grade seventh gen Intel core. It's a dual core, yes, but it's a high base 3.5 gigahertz. You get a quad. It's a touchscreen, by the way. It's a quad HD, 16 gigs of RAM, which you can't get from at that price range with a MacBook Pro. You get integrated graphics, of course, and storage ranging and starting at 256 gigs.
The touchscreen is at $1,500. Are you sure?
I'm looking right at it. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it used to be different.
Yeah, they must have changed it. I was looking at it a few months ago.
Hold on, I lied. It's cheaper.
The touchscreen is cheaper?
Yeah, it's cheaper by 100. It's $13.99.
Wow.
$9.99.
Good job, Razer.
Yeah, so definitely look into Razer. They're a fantastic company. I've owned Razer products, and they've been nothing but amazing, and have lasted a long time. And a lot of people have been buying these Razer laptops, specifically the Stealth, because it's slim, sleek, and is a pretty high performer. Granted, it's not like they have a Razer Blade laptop that's meant for gaming, but this has RGB lighting if you're into that stuff. A wonderful trackpad, not as good as the MacBook trackpad, but
nothing is.
Nothing is, but it's an equivalent that I'd like to say if you really want to stick with the Windows PC or stick in the Windows environment, but you like the quality build of a MacBook, definitely go with Razer. No, hands down, probably the equivalent of Apple in the Windows 10, in the Windows environment. So definitely recommend that. I'll add that link because it's not.
Yeah, I couldn't find anything in the PC side of things that came close to the or I'm sorry, I couldn't find anything in the PC space that was the build quality of a MacBook Pro, but
Mm-hmm.
the Razer and the Dell XPS came the closest.
Yeah.
And I would say the Razer more so than the Dell, because it's almost like Razer stole and this isn't what happened, but it's almost like they stole the design on the MacBook Pro from a few years ago. It looks
Yeah.
very MacBook Pro-y.
It is very
So,
close.
but yeah, I mean, it's a cool looking product. So,
Cool. All right, so that ends the topic. We will include a lot of what we talked about and more in the notes, but take a look at what we have. Hopefully that helps somebody make a decision. If you get angry at us because you think we made a wrong decision or wrong recommendation, send us feedback. But we hope that it's more beneficial. So
yeah,
cool. So Josh, we move on to the most anticipated part.
the most anticipated part. We know that from all the non-feedback we get.
And that being the rant section. It's the best section because it used to be the rant recommendation, but somebody had a problem with it being recommendation.
Hey, I never made you take it out. I just ragged on you enough where you just did.
So I still inserted a recommendation, so I win.
Fail.
But it goes along with a rant, so I'm going to go first if you don't mind.
I don't mind. Go ahead.
Perfect. I was going to go anyways. So I have a problem with finding headphones that actually fit my ear. I use my headphones not just for sitting around listening to music, but when I'm listening to music and working out or cutting the grass, etc. I'm doing physical activities that require me to move around to the point where 90% of the headphones that I've ever used have fallen on my ear. And one of those products, specifically the Apple earpods, never fit in my ear.
The earbuds, you mean?
Earbuds,
Okay,
whatever they're called.
sure.
Did I say pods?
You did, but now they have the AirPods, so it's
Yes.
super confusing. So
Earbuds and then the AirPods. I've wanted to get the AirPods. I think that they're really sleek and probably sound relatively decent. And yes, they're expensive, but the problem is they don't fit in my ear. And headphones like that, which I prefer, don't fit my ear anyways. And so I have a hard time finding them. And finally, I found some that are comparable and aren't $100. I put a link in it. They're called Senso. Maybe that's the right way to say it. But they're Bluetooth headphones. They are so they're inner ear. They get inserted into your ear, but they also have like a wrap around the outside of your ear so they don't fall off. They're fantastic for $25. Can't beat something like that. Battery life is pretty decent. I don't have any complaints other than occasionally I connect to like 3 devices somehow, and it gets really annoying trying to figure out which device it was because it'll keep saying connected, and it gets annoying. But definitely recommend something for $25. So that is my rant / recommendation.
nice. I need to get myself some Bluetooth headphones someday, as now I'm doing more and more yard work as we have a house now. So I actually have a use case for them other than just wanting some, because it gets super annoying to have the cord in your shirt or like around what you're using where it gets caught on stuff, or it's super annoying. Sounds like such a dumb problem on paper, but it really is a problem.
It is.
You want to listen to cool stuff while you're doing the work, and it gets to be a problem. So yeah, cool. Thanks for that recommendation. I will definitely look at it.
All right, Josh, your turn.
My rant relates to things that we were talking about before. Nintendo specifically. They are an interesting company and always have been, and the thing I like about them is that they push the envelope on everything. They are always innovating. That's the best part of Nintendo. Really, all of the console, how do you say, all the console new advancements were basically Nintendo ideas that then other companies grabbed onto, I would argue.
Yes.
With that said, they always somehow miss the mark. Just that little bit. And it's always in the most annoying way. I'll give a great example because this is why I'm ranting. Say I have two Say I have two 3DS devices in my house. Pretend like I have kids, even though that's exactly the case, right? And we have more than one of these little Nintendo handhelds in the house. You cannot associate two of those devices with one Nintendo account. You have to create a brand new Nintendo account for every single one of those devices and then rebuy all the stuff. I get that they're a company that need to make money, but also, this is 2018 and we've already figured this problem out. And most of the other companies in the world who are also trying to make money, where you need to purchase digital products from them, have figured out that they are usually families who buy these products and would like to share the games without having to rebuy them for every single person in the family. Unbelievably, Apple has even figured this out, and they do it that way. So Nintendo needs to stop being so Nintendo-y and figure it out. It's not the end of the world, guys. You can do it. And just look around. It's 2018. Everybody does it. And rant.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I have no comments on that.
Because I'm right.
Yes, you're 100% right. Famous last words.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think that's it for this episode. So that was pretty good. I think we educated some people, hopefully.
Maybe.
So with that being said, thanks everybody for listening to our 13th episode. You can follow the show on Twitter at DigitalDividePC, or send us feedback by sending us an email at askdigitaldivide@gmail.com. Of course, you can find all these links and information about the show through our website, www.digitaldividepodcast.com. And additionally, if you want to follow our personal accounts, I am on Twitter at JustinFrye121. That's Justin FRYE121. And Josh, where can people find you?
At JCharletto, that's my first initial last name, JCIARLETTO. And you can also email me at josh@charletto.com.
Perfect. And if you liked this episode or any of our other episodes, please give us a review on iTunes or wherever you're listening to the podcast. And until next time, take care.
Bye.